I'm Tiana, and today I'm joined by Katherine Shell, and we are reporting for Kids First. Today we are going to be speaking with Brian Armstrong and Cayley Christos about the Netflix docu-series Penguin Town.
Brian Armstrong is an award-winning filmmaker, producer, journalist, author, and environmental advocate. He is also the president and owner of Red Rock Films and the executive producer for Penguin Town. Cayley Christos is the co-owner and production manager of Red Rock Films International, as well as a field producer of Penguin Town. She has over a decade of experience in wildlife and conservation.
How are you guys today?
Hey, nice to be here.
Nice to meet you too.
Hi, Tiana. Hi, Katherine. So nice to meet you.
It's definitely nice to meet you too. I know we've both gotten to see the movie, me and Katherine, and I know I truly loved it.
Yes, me too.
Thank you.
So let's get right into it. So first up, Mr. Armstrong. As the movie points out, there are plenty of penguin docuseries and movies out there. What makes Penguin Town stand out from the rest?
So many things. First of all, the incredible location. Because normally when you think of penguins, you think of how things are cold and ice and snow. And here we have these penguins showing up on a beach in sun-drenched South Africa. So that's the first thing, is that just to get your mind around that it's not the sort of penguins that you're used to seeing in real life, maybe in cartoons, but these guys are really special. And they're also endangered. So what they're doing is trying to really save their own species by finding these new nests. And we've discovered that by going in and we looked at about 80 different nests to start off with, to try and find just the right characters to feature. And then we whittled that down to 30. And then finally we got down to sort of half a dozen or so key characters in this crazy location that really had a great story to tell in representing their own species. And you get to know them really well. They're pretty endearing.
Yeah, I can agree that this was definitely truly interesting, educational and amazing series.
Yeah, the education sneaks up on you a bit, I think. It's kind of fun to watch and you get a lot of laughs out of it, and then suddenly you realize, wow, I learned a lot while I was doing that.
Right. So also, docuseries aren't usually like fan favorites with kids. So why will kids want to watch this and enjoy it?
I think it's just what I said. I think once you start watching, it's really kind of hard to turn off because you get so engaged with these characters in this really unusual location. And then once you get to know the characters, it's really hard to switch off. It's not the kind of documentary where we're giving you lots of information. The information kind of comes naturally. But when these little guys have so much to face and so much to contend with in terms of weather and predators and sometimes each other, we learn a lot doing this series. And a lot of it is that some of the other penguins aren't always nice to their fellow penguins. So there's a lot of things in here that sort of unravel over the course of 8 half hours. And Red Rock Films went to a lot of trouble to really make sure we told those stories in a very legitimate way. So sometimes on wildlife shows, filmmakers cheat a bit. They're talking about one zebra and it's actually this other zebra over here, and they're kind of compiling characters. We went to great lengths to make sure that when we're talking about our character, Mr. B, the penguin, for example, right, that you are looking at Mr. B. So it has this really authentic feel about it as well.
Yeah. And I know that this is a series. I mean, I've already told some of my family members about it. I enjoyed it, and I know that they're going to enjoy it too.
All right. So
yeah, I'm sure. And one of the things we learned, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go on ahead.
I was going to say, and Cayley was probably about to say this as well. One of the things we learned that's really fun about the series is just watching penguins walk. We just discovered that in our storylines, just from a penguin going from point A to point B, is sometimes just hilarious. So there's a lot of reasons to kind of just fall in love with these characters.
Definitely.
All right, so Cayley, I have a couple questions for you. And so everybody has a favorite kid, even if they won't say it out loud. So did you have a favorite penguin or like a penguin family, and why?
Well, I think being on the ground, it was hard not to fall in love with all of them. But our favorite was actually one that has a very small role in the show. So I don't know, Tiana and Katherine, if you remember a small little character called Lord Courtyard Stalker.
Yes.
The penguin that followed him home and really upset his wife. That penguin was actually one of our favorites, and she lived in the garden where we were filming. And over time, she became really, really comfortable living with us, and we left our doors open, and eventually she used to walk right into the house. So she would walk into the house, she would spend time trying to nest under the couches and nest next to the bed, which is really, really lucky and such a privilege to have an endangered animal walking into your house and feeling comfortable. And we went to huge effort to make sure that she felt comfortable. So we kept really quiet and we kept away from her and made sure she was always happy in the house. But we named her Cindy Crawford. And I don't know if you guys know, but Cindy Crawford was a very famous supermodel. And we called her Cindy Crawford because she used to walk into the house looking all very modelish. And then she would find any reflective surface. So anywhere where she could see her face, like a window or a fridge or an oven or a mirror. And she'd go and stand in front of that for hours staring at herself. So and she had a little beauty mark on her face. So we said, that's definitely Cindy Crawford. And she spent a lot of time hanging out with us. The only downside to having Cindy Crawford in the house all the time was that she would poop big fishy poops everywhere, which made the house smell terrible. So it's not advisable to have penguins in your house.
Yes, of course. I mean, and no matter how cute they are, I mean, it's kind of like having like a dog or something. I mean, they're cute and all, but you know, you have to take care of them and clean up and everything. And Cindy Crawford is the perfect name for it.
Great.
Okay. And so this film celebrated the African penguin community. And so it's a very emotional journey for the viewers when watching them like grow and change. What was like your emotional journey that you experienced when filming?
Well, I think for us, finding out firstly that they were endangered and they're under so much threat is always really sad. And so as Red Rock Films and filmmakers that really care about the environment, we started to think of ways there that we could try and help the species and preserve the species. And I think a lot of people nowadays are speaking about a plant-based diet and what you can do to help the environment. And so all of us on production decided that we weren't going to eat any fish because that's the main food source of the penguins. And that's one of the reasons that they're struggling. There's just not enough fish in the ocean anymore. So all the crew didn't eat any fish while we were there. We sponsored some signs to help the penguins. And we tried our best to watch their journey from afar, but try and do things that would help them in the long run. And I'm sure when you watched, you saw some very emotional moments for us, was when little Petal and Twig were growing up and they were really, really struggling with their single dad trying to feed them and keep them fit and healthy and send them out to sea. So everything that we could do, we tried to do, and we hope that the show inspires everybody and the future of the world, the youth, you, Tiana and Katherine, to do everything you can do to make sure that the environment stays strong and that animals like the African penguin persevere for future generations.
Yeah, I mean, I can get like why the viewers would get so attached, but then I think about all of the crew who were filming them, and I just can't imagine like, you know, saying goodbye to them like when they go off to sea must have been hard too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think me and Alex, who's our lead DP on this, were crying when those first penguins, the wheelbarrows chicks, when they first left. We were just standing there in tears. We had watched them grow, we had watched them hatch, we'd watched them grow up, we'd watched them lose their baby feathers and then eventually walk out of the garden behind their parents and walk over the wall down to the beach and find a new life for themselves in the ocean.
And so for my last question, so both of you guys, you know, you guys were on set, you guys were able to kind of experience the lives of the penguins, really dig into, like see them grow up and all that. So what would you say is one experience or memory that you were really able to get from this series? And we can start with you, Mr. Armstrong.
Well, I don't want to give away too many spoiler alerts, about what happens in the series before you've watched. But I think what the big surprise for me is when we started putting everything together, that we started talking about a narrator, and we thought it was going to be a more of a female-led story. And it turns out it's not. Our main character becomes Mr. B, this penguin who ends up having to make sure he's raised his kids himself and see them out to sea. And that's when we started looking for ways to best tell this story. We've got a well-known actor named Patton Oswalt who narrates for us, who does a fantastic job making you sort of root for the penguins. And I think that was the big surprise to me, the big switch. The amount of drama and action that happens throughout the course of the series is also a big surprise. And I think having to have seen the effects of COVID on the shoot, where suddenly people weren't walking the streets, and the penguins, which are already kind of like seen as gods in the town, are able to take over the streets. So there are a lot of surprises along the way, I guess. And I think that the realization that this ended up being a more of a father story than a mother story was the big surprise for me.
Definitely. And what about you, Miss Cayley?
I think for me is when we originally went down there to film the penguins, we thought, oh, this is going to be so funny. Penguins are so cute. Look at them walking down the road. Everybody's going to laugh at them falling down the stairs and falling over their own feet. But then really surprising was when, and I think this happens with any animal, whenever you sit down and you really watch what they're doing for a long time, you realize that their lives are so interesting. Just like ours, they're all unique. They all have unique personalities, and they all have their own troubles that they have to face and things in life that they have to get through. And so to be able to sit and watch Mr. B and the things he had to deal with, and the courtyards and what they had to go through, and the Calverts and their story, and Junior's story, it really shows that every single animal has its own life and its own important journey to go through, and we need to make sure that we're helping them do that in any way that we can.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely agree.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today. It's been a really great pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, thank you. And to everyone watching, definitely make sure to go see Penguin Town, coming out on Netflix June 16th this year, 2021. And that's all for this episode of Kids First. Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss another review or interview that we do. So thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.